So Mark Twain was a great writer, and I don't know if you know this, but you know that wasn't his name. His name is actual Samuel Clemens, right? But Twain he had a pen name, Mark Twain. Mark Twain was not a Christian, and he was actually very vocal in criticizing and ridiculing Christians. In fact, all religions he thought were worthless. And he called Christianity the slaughterhouse religion because of the idea that Jesus' sacrifice on the cross, his shed blood is the reason why we can have our sins forgiven. And Twain met and loved a young Christian girl named Olivia. And her and her family were very devoted in their church, and when they started courting, Mark didn't really speak negatively about Christianity, but after they were married, he returned to his old form of criticizing the Christian faith. At first, Olivia remained steadfast in her faith, but eventually she stopped going to church. The pressure was just too much. Then, after several hardships, first one was a financial collapse in their lives that caused a lot of heartache. But then, probably one of the worst tragedies ever that could happen in any family, they lost a young child. And so, in that grief, Mark Twain went to his wife, Olivia, and said, "It's okay if you lean on your faith at this time." And what's really sad is how Olivia responded to that. She said, "I cannot. I do not have any faith left." See, our closest friends impact our lives in a powerful way. This is why we must choose our friends wisely, carefully. The people that we have in our lives that are closest to us have a great impact on our lives. 3 daily decisions that we make that determine our future. The first one is that who we will worship. If we worship ourselves, that will lead us to a path of certain demise. And if we worship God, the only true God, He will bless our lives. And then, so who we worship and who we worship with. If we want to follow Jesus, we need to worship with those that are following Jesus. And then the last one is who we work with. Who we work with impacts our lives in a great way. Booker T. Washington said this way. He said, "Associate yourself with people of good quality, for it is better to be alone than in bad company." Well, that's a great thought there, but there's none better than what God says and reveals to us. And in Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20, he says, "Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm." Great verse. So if you want to become wise, you want to be wise and you're choosing your friends, walk with those that are wise. We begin this new 2-week series this morning about friendships. And the title of this message is Choosing Friends Wisely. And which is a little bit of a mystery, because a lot of times we don't choose the pools of people that are in our lives. And think about this with me. Almost all of us here this morning, we go to a job or we work online, and we work and we relate with people for a lot of the week. And we don't really choose those. Of course, we chose that job, but we don't choose those people. Basically, our employer chooses those people for us. So we don't have a lot of choice in those people that may impact our lives. But then there's also this idea that when we went to high school or middle school, we didn't choose that. Like our parents chose where we lived, and we went to the school, and so those people that we chose our friends from, they were kind of somebody else's choice in a way. And then if you went to college, maybe that was the first time, the first opportunity that you could actually choose the pool of people that you would bring your closest friends from. Or maybe you went to your second choice, and so you really weren't in full control of that either. And so I want to be completely transparent with you this morning. When at age 18, whenever I went to college, I was not thinking about the impact of the other people around me that I chose to be closest with, how they impacted my life. I was not thinking about that. I was only thinking about how much fun I could have. I wasn't even thinking about even the courses that I was taking. I was thinking about the next time that we were going to be hanging out and having fun. And so the book of Proverbs gives us a lot of wisdom in life, especially about this idea of our friendships, choosing our friendships wisely. So today, allow me to make, mostly from Proverbs, these three ideas, important factors of choosing friends, the friends that we are closest to. We could also say this, we could flip-flop this, and we could say that there's three attributes or characteristics of a good friend. Okay, so the first one is choose friends that will hurt when you hurt. Proverbs 17:17, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. It says a friend loves at all times. See, a true friend doesn't just love in the good times. He or she loves in the bad times as well. So choose a friend that will hurt when you hurt, or as we say, be that friend that hurts with you. And so a friend will be there when you're hurting just as much as they are there whenever you're celebrating. A friend, as Christians, a friend, we should be drawn to those that are hurting and see how we can support, love, and care for them. There's a contrast in this verse. You see that contrast. It says a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. See, it's not really apparent, but there's this contrast. The contrast is that a brother is a family member, and maybe your brother or sister is one of your best friends, but that's not the norm. So a brother, in contrast to a good friend, a true friend, a brother, whenever there's adversity, the brother has to be there. That's what families do. We stick by each other in tough times. But we're there because we have this family love. But a brother or a friend, a true friend, is there by choice, not out of obligation, but as they choose to hurt with others whenever they are hurting. There's another way to look at this verse. Like a real true friend is wrought in adversity, because it says a friend loves at all times and a brother is born for adversity. So as we go through hurt together, we become more than a friend, we become brothers. So let's look at verse in Job. Job, of course, the context of this verse is that he was hurting. I mean, if you think about, if you know what the book of Job tells us, how his life was inflicted with so much pain, losing his family, all but his wife, losing all that he owned. He was a very wealthy man. It was all gone. And here his three friends, his supposed friends, come to him and they're giving him advice, like telling him that, hey, if you just stop rejecting God, maybe you would and accept this discipline that he has in your life, maybe you would be in a better spot. This verse says, he who withholds kindness from a friend forsakes the fear of the Almighty. This is his response. This is Job's response to them saying that this is coming from the discipline of the Lord because he had rejected God. We know that that's not true. We know that he did nothing to deserve the things that happen in his life. And so a friend is there, a true friend. These friends that Job, we see in this passage, they were not there for him and they're hurting for the right reasons. We need to have friends that are there for us, that will hurt for us. This also could also mean that when Job was telling this, it's like, hey, you guys need to be there even if I'm falling away from the Lord. If I'm falling away from the Lord, which that isn't the case, real friends will be there in that hurt to help me back to the Lord. So to illustrate this, I want to talk about what Jesus did. And Jesus had 12 disciples. These 12 men were closer to him than most people. They spent day after day together, and Jesus called them his friends. He even differentiated those disciples from his siblings and said, this is my true friends. And then there was the three, Peter, James, and John. Now, Peter, James, and John were with Jesus on some very special occasions that the rest of the disciples weren't with him at the same time. These three, Peter, James, and John, were on the mountain at the Transfiguration. And there were some other times. And we don't even know, probably because the Gospels don't record everything, of the times that they shared these special moments together. So we have this inner circle of Jesus, the three closest friends, Peter, James, and John. But then there's also Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Now these are three siblings, not of Jesus, but they are three, and Jesus was really close to them. We see that. In fact, we can see that Jesus was there for Mary and Martha. After Lazarus had died, he's there to comfort them, and he actually raises Lazarus from the dead. Jesus hurt with his friends. He even cried in that moment, even though he knew he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead. And then we see the disciple John. Now, John says about himself that he was the beloved of Jesus. He was the one that Jesus loved the most. But I believe that's scripture. I believe that's true. And for whatever reason, Jesus loved John in a special way. John was there at the cross. When Jesus was hurting, John was there. When all the other disciples, when all of his other friends were in hiding, John was at the cross. John was like the friend that sticks closer than a brother. There's a Proverbs 18:24. It says, a friend who sticks closer than a brother. So you want to be a good friend? Love in times of hurting. Or choose a friend that you know, that you see demonstrating caring for those that are hurting. So first, the point is choose friends that hurt when you hurt. And then next, choose friends that will speak the truth in love. We could also say it this way: be the friend that speaks the truth in love. Proverbs 27, verse 6. says it this way: faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse, or many, or having a deceitfulness. Profuse are the kisses of an enemy. So there's a contrast in this verse too. So we're talking about a friend that is faithful and in wounding his own friend. You think, well, that's not really cool. But this is speaking the truth in love. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 15 tells us to speak the truth in love. We're commanded to do that by God. But this verse tells us that faithful are the wounds of a friend. A real mark of a true friend leaves the mark of corrective love. Correction feels hurtful, but in the end, it actually produces good. It's there for the right reason. A person that speaks truth in love does it for the right reason, actually to love. And so it makes us greater friends when we do it the right way, when we speak the truth in love. You aren't really a good friend if you're not able to speak the truth in love. Or maybe we fear rejection. If we do speak the truth in love, we feel this rejection and so we withhold the truth, which then really makes us a manipulator, because we say, I'm going to keep this friendship, or I'm not going to jeopardize this friendship by speaking the truth in love, even though speaking the truth in love would actually make this person a better person. So profuse in this idea is, let's go back to the verse. It says, faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy. So it means an excessive amount or deceit. Profuse. So if it is possible that we could say that an excessive amount of friendship or excessive amount of affection from a fake friend is for the purpose of manipulating. If we can't speak the truth in love into our friends, to our closest friends, it has this connotation of manipulation, of deceit. Proverbs has many of these verses that contrast these contrasting ideas. This is the way one person is, and this is the way the one person, you want to choose this. That's the case with this verse. The contrast here is a friend that will speak truth regardless of the fear and awkwardness, contrasted with the enemy who will tell you anything that you want to hear in order for his own benefit. So we need the first type of friend in our lives, the friend that will speak the truth in love, even when it goes against what we think that they want to hear. Okay, so Proverbs 27:19, it says, the oil and perfume make the heart glad, and the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. What is earnest counsel? Earnest counsel is this idea of speaking truth in love. It's being able to say what needs to be said, even though someone doesn't want to hear it. So we generally have, and think about this, we generally have three types of people in our lives, and I'm over generalizing this, but understand where there's three basic people in our lives. First is the critic, right? And this is the person that, if they could, they would tell us, no matter what we did, how we did it wrong or whatever, right? They're just going to tell us the bad stuff. And that we don't really need critics. Margaret Thatcher actually said it this way. She said, I have many critics in my life, and the critics, no matter what I do, they're gonna give me a negative bent. She said, if I walked on water, they would say, oh, she walked on water only because she can't swim. Right? So that's what a critic does. That's what a critic does. We have critics in our lives. And then we have chameleons, right? Those are the people that can't tell us the truth in love. They're only going to tell us what they think we want to hear, right? And then we have the counselor. This is the person that can speak the truth in love so that we'll hear it. There's many, many examples in the Bible as illustrations here. I mean, I could talk about how Nathan went to David at a very crucial point in his life and spoke truth in there and got his attention. I could talk about how Jesus talked to the woman at the well and he spoke truth in love. Now, let me go to Old Testament. You're not going to go there, but in Exodus 18, there's a story about Jethro, Moses' father-in-law. You know, Moses was used by God to lead the nation of Israel out of Egypt, and they were in the wilderness. And Jethro had heard this, and so he brought Moses' family to him. Said Moses had left his family with his father-in-law whenever he was called back to Egypt for this purpose of leading his nation out of bondage. And Jethro brings his family back to him, who has kids. He has kids now, and he brings them back. And they spent the first day just reminiscing about all that God had done. And then the second day, Moses went to work, and he was judging. He was helping the people decide what was fair, what was right. It was a very long day. Jethro observed this, and then he gave Moses some feedback. And he said, hey, you need some help. You need to develop leaders. You need to help them, equip them to be able to manage 1,000 or 100 or 50 or 10 or 5. Moses took that wisdom, he took that feedback, and he changed. He put people in charge. And because of that, his life, because he was able to hear a critical feedback, his life got better. So Zig Ziglar says this. He says, spend time with those you love. One of these days you will say either, I wish I had, or I am glad I did. So who you choose to spend time with, those, maybe you push back against those that will speak the truth in love because you don't want to hear it. One day you're going to say, man, I wish I would have listened to them. I wish I would have spent more time with them. But hopefully we'll look back in our lives and we'll say, I'm glad I did. I'm glad I had that friend that would speak the truth in love. So you want to be a good friend, then speak lovingly the truth, even though it may not be what your friend wants to hear. Look for a friend that will do that for you. So here's 6 quick steps to speaking the truth in love. The first one is pray before speaking. Man, don't do any type of feedback unless you have prayed about it. Ask God to speak through you. And then let God direct your speaking. You'll be like, okay, when after you've prayed up and you've asked God to speak through you and ask the Holy Spirit to manifest himself through the fruits of the Spirit through you in that moment. After that, when you're going into that, make sure that you're seeking the Lord even as you're speaking. And then the third thing, draw from a deposited balance. And what I mean by this, in our relationships, we invest our lives into their lives, and these are the ones that we want to speak into. If you have not invested anything into that person's life, then you probably shouldn't be speaking truth in love because it probably won't be received. But so draw from this deposited balance. So invest in people's lives so that God can speak the truth in love through you. And then choose your audience well. What I mean by this, do it privately if you can. Don't do it with a bunch of people listening that don't need to hear. That will only cause issues. And then make sure, speak the truth. Don't speak your opinions. Speak the truth. If you have an opinion about what I should do differently and it doesn't line up with the Word of God, then, settle that with God, not me. And then last thing is speak with an attitude of love and respect. What is your purpose? What is the goal of this conversation? Is it coming from a place of attitude of love and respect? Okay, so the first point, choose your friends that will hurt with you. Choose a friend that will speak truth in love. And then next, choose a friend that will forgive when wronged. Choose a friend that will forgive when wronged. Or be the friend that never withholds forgiveness. It's a tough one, man. Look at Proverbs 17. Proverbs 17, verse 9. It says, whoever covers an offense seeks love. So the idea of forgiving, cover an offense. Somebody has offended you. Someone has sinned against you. You cover it. In other words, don't do what the next part of the verse says, where it says, but he who repeats a matter, who repeats that hurt that someone else has done to you, separates close friends. So, be that type of friend that will never withhold forgiveness. Choose a friend that always forgives. This reveals a fundamental problem in every church, and it is unforgiveness. Which in the church, it should be all about forgiveness because we have been forgiven. Jesus has forgiven us so much more than what that one person has done to us. So God tells us a real friend seeks to love by not revealing it to what I have done to them to other people. Whoever covers an offense seeks love, one who forgives, but he who repeats a matter separates close friends. If you want to be a good friend, you want to have a good friend, forgive extravagantly. The opposite of an extravagant forgiver is the person in the second part of this verse. Remember, Proverbs have a lot of verses that contrast. This is another one. And this extravagant giver is contrasted with the person that openly shames other people. We just did that shame series the last several weeks. And this is talking about that person that shames them maybe it's to make them feel better. But it separates people. So in other words, what happens is we have friends. We're in a church setting. We have friendships. Some are closer than others. And someone, ultimately, it's going to happen. We are going to do things that is sin against each other. Maybe not intentionally, maybe it is intentionally, but it's going to happen. It happens in every group of people. It happens at the grocery store. It happens at work. It happens in the church. And what happens is that this person, rather than being offended and covering and protecting that person that hurt us, rather than loving them by protecting them so no one else finds out about it, we talk about it to a group of people, and it divides that group. It separates. This is what this verse says. Proverbs 16:28. A dishonest man spreads strife, and a whisper separates close friends. So he's calling out gossip and slander. Person that gossips and slanders causes strife and breaks up friendships. This is like middle school crap. No, I'm serious. And if you're in middle school here this morning, I'm not dissing you, but I was there one time. I was in middle school. I know what happens. I've had girls that went through middle school. I know what happens. I lived through those days of having 3 daughters in middle school at different times and at the same time. Man, it's drama all the time. Someone did this and that, and friends forming against the other friend that did this and that. And then you see it come back around about a year later. They bring them back into the family, a friend, everything's good. And then something else happens. Then somebody else is out in the out. It's middle school crap. And if you're offended by that word, I apologize. And you know what's really scary? You know what's really scary is that we have parents that perpetuate this rather than put a stop to adolescent development in this idea of they gotta learn how to navigate life. Rather than put a stop to the division, they encourage it, or they do nothing, and it's just crazy. There's an illustration in the Bible, in the book of Hosea. The book of Hosea he's a prophet. He's a minor prophet the whole book is about the nation of Israel rejecting God and God wooing them back to himself, still loving them and seeking to get them back and forgive them. And so Hosea is this prophet that God tells to marry a prostitute. So he does. He's a prophet. He wants to do what God tells him to do. He says, marry a prostitute. Marries a prostitute. Her name is Gomer. Now, Gomer and Hosea have 3 kids. And life is fine, but she leaves them. And so Hosea doesn't just leave her go. Maybe she returned to her old lovers. Hosea goes out and gets her. And he brings her back home and says, this is your home. I am your husband. You belong with me, and we are a family. And he forgives her. And it's this great illustration of what God does. Hosea, the husband of Gomer, and God, the father, the husband of the nation of Israel, seeking to forgive and to welcome people back into the family. We need friends that will forgive us when we need to be forgiven and won't expose it to other people. And we need to be the friend, the type of friend that will protect those that sin against us, that hurt us, by not speaking about it to other people. So remember, the first point, choose friends that will hurt with you as you hurt. Choose a friend also, secondly, that will speak the truth in love. And then choose a friend that will forgive when wronged. So in closing, I want to return to Mark Twain. Mark Twain, of course, married Olivia. She left the faith because of his ridicule. It was just too tough. and he was a big critic of Christianity and all religions, but he said this that is really, really important, that he got this statement right. He got many things right, but he said this: the trouble is not in dying for a friend, but in finding a friend worth dying for. Are you the type of friend that someone would die for you? You see, we need to choose friends, and we need to be the friend that will hurt with others, that will speak truth to others regardless of the difficulty, and that will forgive others. And I believe, though this is not a comprehensive list of characteristics of a good friend, but it's a good start. But I believe that if we do these things well, I think there'll be a lot of people that would say, you know what, I'd do almost anything for that person. Do almost anything.